right, folks. Welcome, everybody, once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama, and we're going to have some fun talking some Irish football today. Before we get going, I want to mention a few things, and that is it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page and click on the premium section, sign up for a premium subscription. Lots going on with Notre Dame football. Obviously, camp ended yesterday, and we got a nice little update on where we think things stand with Notre Dame football. So as well as all kinds of commentary and just all kinds of thoughts that's going on right now as far as Notre Dame football goes. So great time to sign up. Go click on the premium section of irishsportsdaily.com. Sign up today. Also, if you have not subscribed and liked our YouTube channel, I'd greatly appreciate it if you do that. And if you would share the content, we'd love for you to share that content with other Irish fans. If you like the shows and everything, just send them a link and see if they like it as well. Also, this episode is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang, and Chicago's go-to for the best custom suits, shirts, sports coats. As Notre Dame reloads for the season, now is the time to refresh your wardrobe and add the perfect suit, sport coat, tuxedo, or casual jacket for fall. ESQ Master Tailors combine next-level craftsmanship with the finest fabrics to deliver a fit that's built just for you. With showrooms in both downtown Chicago and Winnetka, book your custom fitting and step into confidence with Chicago's finest. Mention ISD at your appointment and receive 10% off your entire purchase. First of all, Yama, great to see you again. It was great to see you. It was last week, really.
Yeah, last week.
We had a good time hanging out. It was good to see you, man. And we got to talk some ball and talk some Irish football. Got to see some football, all that kind of stuff. So that was great. Obviously, fall camp is now underway. The actual camp is over, and now Notre Dame's going to turn their attention to the season. Yama, the thing that I think that a lot of people aren't talking about, and which is kind of surprising, is that this is a pretty healthy team. When was the last time they came out of a camp without any sort of really major significant injury? And that's just so rare to happen. And, I know we haven't seen practice or whatever, but, usually we get to see, who's in the pit, who's working and can actually participate. And there's really just nobody there that's a significant injury and so that I think is very encouraging. And then even some other things that are encouraging is, hearing that Jordan Botelho participated in this, the scrimmage and in practice and things like that. So even guys that we weren't quite sure about when they would be available, it sounds like Jordan Botelho, I'm not going to say he's going to play again in the Miami game, but, here's a guy that should be able to help pretty soon. And so that's really encouraging. And as much as we're going to talk about the quarterback situation, we're going to talk about all the stuff that everybody wants to talk about. That's the best news, really, I think. And it's just, this is a deep team. It's got a lot of depth. But if you can start the season healthy, that's a good thing. And so I think that this is something that just really hasn't been mentioned much. And I think it's a big factor heading into the season. Your thoughts here?
Oh, it's huge. I think there's been so many camps. I think back to 2019 where Cole Kmet and Michael Young, those are, two guys, two starters for Notre Dame at tight end and receiver. Obviously Cole Kmet was super valuable for that 2019 Notre Dame team. Both of them break their collarbone within days of each other. In 2019, they weren't available at the beginning of the season. Kevin Austin foot injury in 2020, that was a huge one for them. 2021, Maris Lee fell out for the season, after he was having a lights out camp. 2022, Avery Davis out for the season, captain, expected to have a huge year, probably going to be wide receiver 1 for Notre Dame on that team. He's out. Patterson hurt his foot, all of these kind of, even last year, right? You get the first week of camp, you got Charles Jagasaw. Sorry about that. My mic got muted for a sec. But that was Charles Jagasaw was the one injury before camp. So that kind of counts. That is the one thing that I would say. But he's not out for the season, where like he was, like he missed the whole entire regular season last year. And Gabe Rubio, broke his foot in like literally the first day of camp. So I mean, I don't want to like brush over the fact that Kevin Bauman and Kedron Young got hurt, but those guys weren't seen on the same level in terms of the depth chart of where these guys were. So I think they're in a really good Botello scrimmaging. He's got to be very close. Like, I don't know if maybe they won't play him in the Miami game, but if he's scrimmaging, that tells me that they could. Like, that is an actual chance, because you're not putting a guy in full go in those situations if he's not very close to playing.
I agree. And so I that was very, very encouraging news. I was excited to hear it. And it's funny because we talk about it off the air about, boy, I hope we don't see anybody in the pit or whatever. And it's just been one of those years. So maybe last year's bad luck won't be as bad as this year. And we just got to hope that that's the case. All right. I mean, look, everybody's going to want to talk about the quarterback situation. Of course, we're going to talk about it. We're going to discuss it. And I know that everybody wants to have their opinion on it and whether or not, I don't. There's just, Jamie, there's just been a lot of what I call just noise out there about this. And, I know some other media outlets reported that, Kenny Minchey was going to start. And all of this, and there's been a lot of kind of speculation back and forth, and I've heard people say that certain people are upset if that's the case. And dude, here's what I don't get: we haven't seen it, right? We haven't seen practice. How can anybody formulate an opinion on who should start if you're not even there? If like, we haven't seen it. We saw the first spring practice. We saw the first fall practice. That's all we've seen. And, that's not enough to make any sort of informed decision on who should start or who should be the guy. And I think what has happened here is there are a lot of people who have said, well, this is going to happen, or this is what should happen. And when it doesn't happen, people are upset about it. And I get why. But to me, I just think people are speculating way too much on things that they don't know anything about. Now, do we hear some stuff from practice? Sure, we hear some stuff from practice, but we're not there. And to think that we have in the media have a better understanding of what should happen versus the coaching staff and what should happen. And, again, there's a lot of a speculation about, the thing that I guess was most disappointing to me is to hear that people were saying, hey, look, it's a divided room on how this should go. And again, I just don't know how you could know that at this point. Look, if Kenny Minchey was going to start, let me ask you this question, Jamie. If they knew Kenny Minchey was going to start, wouldn't they have played him the entire Jersey scrimmage with the ones? Of course they would have. Absolutely they would have. Because, look, if he's going to be your guy, and you know that already, you want that guy to get as many reps as you can. And so I just have a feeling that there was I don't know. I don't want to say that there was some misinformation or whatever the case was. I really don't know. What I do know is that they would not have played both of them if they, if this decision was made. There's no reason to do that. I mean, if you know who it is, you want that guy to get as many reps with the first team as you possibly can. And so the other thing too is, again, I just think that there are a lot of people making comments about things, and that's how we got into this situation to begin with. There were a lot of people who made a lot of comments about the talents of each quarterback, and those people have not actually been there to watch and to see. And I'll be the first guy to admit, I haven't been there either. So I don't have a very informed opinion about who should start and who shouldn't. I don't think anybody does in the media. And I think that that's really, there's been a lot of speculation, and there's been a lot of hype around CJ Carr. And I think a lot of people felt like he was going to be the guy. I understand why. If you watch CJ play and you watch him throw the ball, he can make some amazing plays, and I get it. But that's only part of it. That's only part of it. There's a lot of other things that go into it. And I want to be clear before anybody gets any sort of misconception about my comments. I don't know who's going to start. I honestly don't. I really don't know. And I I don't think anybody else truly knows either. What I do think we do know, and I will say, I think the media has been responsible in saying that Kenny Minchie, from things that we've heard, and I've seen other media outlets say the same thing, Kenny Minchie has played more. I would say he's made the least amount of mistakes. Okay. He's made the least amount of mistakes. And I think it's also fair to say that I don't think that either guy has played lights out. And I think that just based off everything that we've seen, we can all agree with that, meaning everybody in the media and everybody who's reporting that. I think we all seem to agree with that. But other than that, I'm not sure that we really know what's happened here. And I don't think that anybody can have a really strong opinion or informed opinion about what should and shouldn't happen. Your thoughts here, Jamie?
Yeah, honestly, Mike. Okay, so last spring, not this spring, last spring, we were at the Jersey scrimmage in the spring, and CJ Carr, when he was early enrollee, and he looked good that day. He had a good day. But I saw people in the press box, Mike, acting like this guy was the second coming based off a couple throws. And I was like, settle down. Like, but I could already tell that those people had it in their mind that it's a rep. He is going to be the guy. Forget about that. Kenny Minchie also looked really good that day or whatever, right? Like, it didn't matter to them, or even Angeli or whatever. Like, it did not matter to them at all what actually happened on that day, because they had it in their mind already. They just were looking for a reason to anoint him. And that has been partially the case with some people the whole time. And it created a false narrative, right? And I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff where, Matt reported that there was definitely CJ Carr, he's bound to have heard that there was people going out reporting that Minchie was going to be the quarterback, and that it probably had some kind of impact on him. Well, Minchie probably had some kind of impact on him that all these people said CJ Carr's whatever. Look at any kind of national preview thing, and every single thing is CJ Carr. Kenny Minchie is not even mentioned by these people. And if I was Kenny Minchie, I would be angry, and I'd be like, okay, well, I'm going to show you. But that has been the narrative the whole time. And it's been that way. And that has formed people's opinions, like, who are outside of the program. And yeah, I completely agree. Like, only the people in the program know exactly every step of the process and how it's looked all camp and all that. And I really want to fight back against the idea that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. It's a great soundbite. It's just also not true. Sometimes you have no quarterbacks because you have no quarterbacks. Like, I think 2022 season, I don't think Tyler Buckner or Drew Pine was the answer. I think we saw that, that both of those guys were not the answer, even though that Tyler Buckner was the undisputed QB1. He wasn't the answer. But we've seen where Notre Dame started a season with Brandon Wimbush, won a game against Michigan, a tough game in Michigan at its home. 3 games later, Ian Book takes over. They go to the playoff, right? They go undefeated in the regular season. Wimbush had to come back later in that year and win a game for them. Kaiser had to take over for Zaire in 2015. Getting it done for some reason. I don't know. But you could argue that Kaiser was better, but we didn't know it at that time, than Zaire would have been that year. He was great. And national champions like Cardale Jones takes over for JT Barrett. Trevor Lawrence wasn't the starter at the beginning of 2018. Kelly Bryant was the returning starter. Jalen Hurts got benched in the national championship game. Like, that happened. And Tua took over. they beat Georgia in the final. Georgia started this even Jacob Eason was the starter, and Jake Fromm took over. So it's just one of those things where you don't know how it's going to turn out, and we don't even know that whoever wins this job is going to be the guy a month from now. Things can change.
Absolutely.
Things can change.
Absolutely.
So people just need to let it play out. Obviously, whoever won the job will have earned it, because I'm telling you too, there's just no defense that Notre Dame will face this year that is as good, especially against the pass, than their own defense. So
yeah,
from that perspective too, it's like you couldn't ask for when you put them in an adverse situation, you couldn't ask.
I don't know why this keeps getting unplugged. I'm sorry about that, folks, but it is, you couldn't ask for a harder situation to go against than this defense. So I don't think people should overreact to anything. You have to play out. They're obviously going to make a decision this week. Whether they announce it or not, they might not announce it, as they might want to keep it so Miami doesn't know. I don't know. But they will make a decision this week. And if you look at it, there's been like 5 quarterback things that I've seen today of like, this guy's the starting guy. It's all at the same time. So they're going to, today or tomorrow, they will tell those guys who the quarterback is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if Notre Dame's actually going to announce it. We don't talk to Marcus Freeman until next week. So, they may try and keep it quiet until then, but it's going to leak out. I mean, when whoever starts, it becomes obvious. It's going to leak out, and it will. I think you made some good points in that whoever is the starter for the Miami game doesn't mean they're going to be the starter for A&M, doesn't mean they're going to be the starter the entire year. It just depends on how things go. And I think that you would try and give your starter at least a game or two before you pull them. But if you're in a tight game and things aren't going well, you got to do what you got to do. So I think that's the important thing. And then again, I think there's just been this kind of hype that I'm just not sure it's been justified at this point. And that's not to discount the talent of CJ Carr. I think that the hype as far as his talent goes is legit, right? I think that the guy has that kind of talent. I think that that's legit. But it's interesting because I remember talking to a very trusted source, way back then, way back when, and even recently. And that person had said, I think a lot of people think that CJ Carr is going to come in and be Jimmy Clausen or even Brady Quinn as he was, as a true freshman. I think they're going to be disappointed, that's not who the guy is at this point. Now, that doesn't mean that he won't get there. And I think that, and this was previously, so, he's obviously had some more practices and has probably advanced since then, just like I'm sure Kenny Minchie has. But you have to understand that there's talent, and then there's also where are you in the development of the quarterback, right? Where are you in seeing things? Where are you on understanding your responsibilities? And where are you in protecting the football? And where are you doing things? And I keep saying this, and I don't think people understand is, Tyler Buckner would go out and he would make 3 fantastic plays in a row. And you'd be like, wow, I see why this guy's, got this kind of potential and talent. And then he'd throw a pick 6. Well, those 3 plays don't matter if you throw a pick 6, the next one. It does not matter. And that's why it's important that whoever they put in this position also understands that, hey, we're protecting the football too. And I'm not saying that CJ Carr is the only one who throws interceptions. Kenny Minchie's thrown plenty too. It's just important for the coaching staff that you have to protect the football too. You can't just force balls. You can't just, take too many chances with the football, especially when you're playing on the road in the first game, or you're playing a team like Texas A&M's got a good defense, right? Because you're not going to get many opportunities to score. So when you do have the football, you have to protect it. That's why Notre Dame won a lot of games last year. Riley Leonard was not necessarily a great passer, but he did protect the football pretty well. And a lot of times when he didn't, that's when things went south pretty quickly. You have to understand that. And so I'm not in the camp for either guy. I want the best guy. And that's what everybody should want. And what I'm here to say is I don't know who that is. I really don't. I don't have the knowledge. I've not seen it. And so I don't think it's fair for people to say this guy should be the guy or this guy should be this. I just don't think it's fair if you've not actually been there to actually witness it. And so, I think sometimes our customers can get a little bit frustrated with us that we're not just throwing a bunch of crap out there. But that's been my MO for 25 years, right? I'm not going to just throw a bunch of BS out there just so I have some sort of content. I'm going to throw out what I know is factual based off of things that I've heard. And I'm not saying that anybody else in the media isn't doing the same thing. I'm just telling people how we operate. But I think when push comes to shove, we were the first outlet in the spring to say, hey, you know what? Kenny Minchie actually played better all of spring until the spring game. We were the first to say that. Then all of a sudden, everybody else is saying the same thing. And we were also kind of the first this fall to kind of say, hey, look, this is a lot closer than people think. A lot of people think that this is going to go one way very quickly, and that's not been the case. And I think it's been that situation. And so while, we're not throwing out all this information out there, I think what we do throw out there is pretty accurate. And I hope our customers definitely understand that. And that's why we operate that way. All right. Now, here's the thing. Jamie, I think, from things that I've gathered in talking to people, it seems like the defense has gotten the better of the offense pretty much all fall camp. The offense have had a few good days based off of things I've heard. But I think that, the defense has been winning most days out there. Do you think this is a situation where we should be concerned about the offense? Or do you think this is a situation where this defense is just that damn good? Your thoughts?
I don't think people should be overly concerned about that. Like, that is also very much what happens in most camps when the defense is good. And Notre Dame's defense probably isn't good. It's great. So that in that sense, I don't think it's something to freak out about at all. I mean, I would say that in the camps in the last few years where we have had more access and have seen it the whole time, the defense has been better every single one of those camps too. And I last year, I think if you look at where, say, that Texas A&M game, and if they hadn't gone up against Notre Dame's defense all camp, I don't think in the fourth quarter they're coming through and winning that game, because the offense stepped up and came up and win that game. Leonard stepped up and won that game. They ran the ball on them, even though they struggled to run the ball early in the game. Second half, they did. That's a product of going against your defense that whole time. And if you can build more confidence if you're lighting up the defense and all that. I'm not saying that there isn't something there. It's great to build confidence, but I think people also forget, there was times Matt reported it. By the way, Matt Freeman just killing it with the reporting. People should just check out. He's got an update on Notre Dame's board right now about the scrimmage. He's consistently had great intel the whole camp. He had intel that, there was a day that Notre Dame's offense dominated in the red zone against Notre Dame's D. It's people didn't overreact to that because they know that Notre Dame's D is good. So it's just one of these things that happen. It happens throughout the course of camp. It's going to be something that you're going to be challenged there. I think ultimately, kind of like what Mike Denbrock said when he's asked about it, it can be frustrating because he's not a patient guy and he wants things to work at a certain level. Ultimately, it's a good thing and it makes them better for when there is nothing better than going against that defense to get them prepared to play Miami and Texas A&M in your first two games.
I think it's so true. I go back to I was a wrestler. Go ahead, Greg. If you got something you want.
Well, just on the defense dominating point, the best player on the entire football team is Jeremiah Love, and he's not getting a ton of work.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
Point.
They're going to the best player on the team isn't doing it. You should dominate.
JD Price got a lot of reps yesterday either, and so I think that they were protecting a couple guys yesterday. I think, and that's important. It certainly is important to point that out. And I think anyway, to go back to my point, I take it back to some of my own experiences in competition. When I was a wrestler, I was a real mouthy kid. I've always been really mouthy. And there was this kid who was a senior, state champion wrestler, 30 pounds heavier than me. And I was getting kind of mouthy at practice. And my wrestling coach wanted to make an example of me. And he did this in football too, because I was mouthy there too. I'll tell that story sometime too. But I was being mouthy, and he put me against this guy. And I said, you know what? I'm not gonna sit here and take this. I'm not gonna just let this guy beat me. And the guy was so frustrated because I was so much quicker and faster than him that he couldn't score any points on me. And I was frustrating the crap out of it, but it just motivated and brought my level of competition up sky high, because I'm like, oh, you want to do this? You're going to try and embarrass me? No, I'm not going to allow that to happen. So now in football, it didn't work that way because I was getting mouthy. And we had a all conference, should have been all state linebacker who was a senior, and I was a freshman, and I was a wide receiver at that point. And he said, Frank, go in there and play tailback.
Didn't go as good when you were
3 times straight in the middle. And I mean, he just unloaded on me, and I learned my lesson that day to shut my mouth. So that's just kind of the way it is. But anyway, I digress.
Go ahead. One other thing I want to add about the defense too, and because it's something that I think really stood out about what Chris Ash said yesterday was, he was asked if this walking into this defense, if this was like the most talented defense that he's walked into. And he said the only one that's comparable is 2014 Ohio State, which of course they won the national championship that year. They were pretty darn good. And if you look at that roster, this is exact quote. To be honest with you, the only place it would probably be comparable is when I went to Ohio State in 2014. There were a lot of really good players there, very similar to this situation here. People can say a lot of things about me, but I'm not dumb. If I was going to take this job, it was because we had some pretty good players, and we do. That Ohio State defense had 10 future NFL draft picks play 200-plus snaps. They had 4 guys who either barely played or only played special teams that went to the league on that roster. 3 of those guys ended up being first-round picks who didn't even play on that defense. So they had a lot of talent. So if he's comparing it to that shows you the kind of talent that Notre Dame has on defense, which isn't really surprising or anything different from what we've been saying, like this defense is loaded with talent. But it gives you an idea of that's what they're going up against this season. I'm telling you, they won't face a defense this season that has the same level of talent in the regular season. I would say A&M a little bit closer. Miami's got a couple guys that can be really, really great, right? But depth from like the first to second team and all that, no, they won't play any team that is the amount of depth and talent that Notre Dame has all season.
That was my next talking point. Is the thing that I'm most impressed about this defense, Jamie, is just the waves of talent that they can throw at you. And I think it's telling, if you kind of read the tea leaves and things I heard yesterday, I heard Marcus wasn't particularly happy with the offensive line play yesterday. And, this was out on the field. He wasn't very happy with it. And we've heard Joe Ruoff getting on his offensive line the entire time. And to me, we know that's a pretty good offensive line. We know that those guys have played a lot. But I think that the frustration, I'm hoping, is that this defensive line is quite a bit better. And, I heard great things about Bryce Young yesterday. I think we know that Boubacar Traore can get after the quarterback. We know that Junior Tui Halamaka, against some pretty darn good players last year, at the end of the year, really rose up and played great. We have a healthy Joshua Burnham, who we haven't had in a long time. Anye's clearly motivated and ready to go. Gabe Rubio. They just got this, they got 8 guys they can throw out there, probably 10 that they can throw out there. And the drop-off really isn't that different. And there's just been a long time since we said that. And I think you look at the linebackers. I love the fact that Jalen Sneed has been the first guy out there the entire time. We know Kingston's a very good player. And we know that, he's a guy that's pushing for playing time. The fact that Jalen Sneed is out there with the ones every single time tells me that Jalen Sneed is playing very good football, because he'd have to be in order to hold off a guy like Kingston, who's a very, very talented player. But then you have guys like Jaden Osbury, who's played a lot, but also has added a bunch of weight. I've heard good things about Kahano Kia starting to rise up a little bit. We know that Madden Ferrermo and Teddy Rizak have improved as well. So there's just waves. And then the encouraging thing was what he had to say about, the safety room, and basically saying, hey, this safety room that's the one position that I think has risen the most since I've got here. So we know they have good corners. We know they have great linebackers. We know they got some talent on the defensive line and a lot, but it's encouraging to hear. And I think it's true that we know that Luke Tolich is pretty good, but Stroman seems to be the guy that's playing in front of him right now. We know Tay Johnson's pretty good, and Stroman's the guy that's playing in front of him right now as well. So I think when they say we can go 4 deep there or 4 different players we can rotate at safety, I think that's legit. And so I think that the defense, I don't want to blow them up and make them something they're not, but I have a feeling this group's going to surprise. And I mean, when you think about it, what does surprise mean? Because they were so good last year. How could they be better? And I'm not sure they're going to be better, but I think that they're going to be deeper. And that is going to help them overcome, little injuries and things like that. And that's exciting. Anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
Well, yeah, I think one of the things to know that with like Jalen Stroman, Luke Tolich, Tay Johnson, and those guys competing with Adon Schuler at safety, like none of those guys are going to be exactly what X Watts was. Like that's like an impossible thing. But the combination of the defense as a whole, I think, can make up for, what you lose with X Watts, right? Like the playmaking and all that. And that I think, and like the defensive line being better, which is not surprising because of course guys like Bryce Young were going to get better. And it's about like how big of a step he was going to take. And it sounds like he took a big step. Like if I was going to say that the most encouraging things to come out of camp for me on the defensive side of the ball is that you hear that one, health-wise, which we talked about, the fact that like, Botello is way closer and all that, that's great. But Bryce Young, like really looking like that dude, Jason Onye coming in and having like the best camp that he's had and like really standing out and like him being a starter. Because I think that's what they kind of needed was because he has shown capabilities that other guys don't have the same capabilities as him physically. And he just he had to put that all together. And it sounds like he is putting that all together. And that is massive for the defense. And like you said, like Sneed, like staying at that consistent level, it's like, oh no, he really is playing at that high level now. Like that to me is like why I think it would be impossible for the defense not to take a step when you know that all the kind of questions people had about going in, not that there was many questions about the defense, but all the questions people had, they're being answered in really positive ways.
Yeah. The other thing too is I like hearing, I heard some things about guys taking second team reps that, like I've heard, Sean Savillano took some second team reps. To me, that says they like Sean Sevillano, right? They wouldn't give him that opportunity unless and that's encouraging to hear because we know there's some pretty darn good players there already. And so the fact that they want to take a look at Sean Sevillano in second team reps, that says a lot. Madden Ferrero, I think, is a guy who got some second team reps. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Does that mean they're looking to see if they can put him as a fifth linebacker? Is that what that means? So just hearing these things are encouraging. The other thing that really stood out to me, Jamie, is when I'd hear like depth chart things and stuff like that is Carson Hobbs, played a lot of slot corner, nickel position, and did play some corner, but they wanted to see what he could do at slot. That's important, but when you look at the situation behind corner, there's not a lot of depth there. There isn't. And you're looking at a lot of freshmen. And my understanding is a lot of those freshmen got a lot of looks. You wouldn't do that unless you felt like those freshmen had a lot of talent and they could play this year. And so, I've heard really good things about Mark Zachary. Now, do I love that he's 180 pounds? No. But the one thing, if you remember, Jamie, I was a huge Mark Zachary fan. And the reason I was a huge Mark Zachary fan was twofold. He's an extremely instinctual player, kind of showed those kind of instincts that X Watts had, where he just always seemed to recognize where to be and what to do. And when the ball was coming, and he just had this really innate feeling for it. We know that he had a pick yesterday. He may have had two. This is a guy that I don't think you'd play that many freshmen at the corner position, giving him that many opportunities, unless you felt like, hey, these guys can play. So again, I think that's encouraging when you think about it. Anything else you want to add about the defense before we start talking more offense?
I think that is encouraging about all those guys. And I think, Hobbs was one of the guys people were raving about in the spring.
Yeah.
And the fact that Cree Thomas was someone who was being raved about in the spring, right? Like Leonard Moore said he was BMO 2.0 and that he was, he had a great spring. And the fact that both Golden and Zachary are there, because you can see with say a guy like Chris Burgess, who, he looks fantastic. I think he is going to be a great player for Notre Dame eventually, but he's not pushing through other people. He's not beating anyone out at this point. And these guys have really stepped up, and they're not afraid to put them in those situations. And it's not to say that they're going to be, as good as Leonard Moore or Gray, or if one of those guys goes down, it's, obviously it's a big jump up, but you just look at Mike Mickenson's track record, since he's been at Notre Dame, like Clarence Lewis, Jade Mickey, Ben Morrison, Christian Gray, Leonard Moore, all played as freshmen. And really, all those guys were good as freshmen. Mickey was the only guy who really wasn't good as a freshman. He got better as a sophomore, but everybody else was good as a freshman. So
I can't believe any corner that doesn't want to play for Mike Mickens is nuts. They're nuts.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Yeah.
Well, and then he had Sauce Gardner was a freshman at Cincinnati. It's a track record there where obviously, he's a guy who is great at identifying talent, but he's great at developing guys and getting these guys to play. Because I would have said Dallas Golden, well, he's coming in. He hasn't played a lot of corner in high school. He's played a lot of different positions. He played safety more than he played corner on defense. So, it's going to take some time. The fact that he's already competing there and they like him, that's really encouraging.
Yeah. And I can't say how impressed I am with Notre Dame's coaching on defense. When you look at, because you bring in a guy like Max and you're not sure. He hasn't been that guy. He hasn't been the linebacker coach yet. He's coached for a lot of people. He's been sort of the linebacker coach, but he hasn't been the linebacker coach. And when you see the development of that whole group as a whole, and Jamie, that's a very difficult position to play. I mean, it just is. And just to see how pleased everybody is with where they're at with that room right now. And then just to see Jalen Sneed develop and become the player that hopefully we think he can be, that's encouraging to see. And I've said that many times because it's true. You can tell a great coach when the entire room gets better. Not just a player or two, but when the entire room gets better, that's the sign of a good coach. And I think Notre Dame's got that at D line. We've seen that countless times. Al Washington's done a great job with that group. We see it at linebacker. We're seeing it at DB as well. So, flipping to the other side, Jamie, people have asked me kind of, private and all this type of stuff. What am I probably most encouraged of on offense? And I'd say I feel pretty good about this wide receiver group. I do. I don't think there's no Michael Floyd, right? There's no Michael Floyd. We know that. But I do think that there's a lot of really good players here that if you get them the football, they're going to make good things happen. We've seen what Jaden Greathouse can do against great talent, and I think that that's going to continue. We've seen Jordan Faison make plays. But you add Malachi Fields, all reports about him have been great. All reports about Will Pauling have been great. But then, you talk about, Elijah Barres, you talk about KK Smith, who we'd mentioned. This is a guy that people forget about. But again, he's mentioned as, hey, here's a guy that's starting to emerge. We know all about all the other guys, Micah Gilbert, and I know he had a pretty good day yesterday as well. So I feel a lot better about this position than I did going into it. I was unsure, but I think that this is going to be a group that if they get the quarterback play that they need, this is going to surprise. This is going to be a group that's going to be better than people think. What are your thoughts here?
Oh, it's definitely the strongest it's been in quite a while, right? And I think about like when they had in a row, they had Equanimeous St. Brown, and then they had Miles Boykin and Chase Claypool, and Javon McKinley couldn't even get on the field, didn't even have the hope of getting on the field. In his fifth year, he leads the team in receiving. Like, he didn't do anything really his whole career before that. He had like one kind of big game in a garbage time situation before that, and he turned out he was like a pretty good player, just that there were just guys in front of him. So I think they're a lot closer to that situation now. And I wouldn't even say like Fields, I think, can be that kind of guy, like a St. Brown, a Boykin type, like that kind of impact. Like, he can be a wide receiver one type. And then I think obviously Greathouse has that too. And I think it's been a while since you could say like Notre Dame had two guys that you felt like these guys could be go-to guys. And like you said, I'm not saying either one of those guys is Michael Floyd or they're going to be just dominant guys, but two like really, really high level guys. And I like that. I like the depth there. I think Gilbert, obviously that's Greg's guy who's like, he's been hyping up for a really, really long time. And I think just him just continuing to kind of have the kind of progress he's had, where if he has to play, I think he's going to be a pretty good player for Notre Dame. And they're just in a much better spot in terms of depth and what they have there. I'd say the top four is way better than it's been in like probably like 5, 6 years, maybe 7, maybe even longer. And then just throughout, you got to say like they're probably like top, 7, 8 is better. And I know people are, it's funny because all that kind of talk of like Marcus Freeman was talking, and there's a lot of positive stuff, but he didn't mention Cam Williams, and people were like, "Whoa!" Right off Cam Williams. I mean, I just brought up the McKinley point, like, and by the way, like Claypool did not even have close to what he had until later on. So people shouldn't give up on the guy yet. Like, first of all, let's let the season play out. He's only in his second year at Notre Dame, so let the season play out, see what happens. Also, let like his career play out. Obviously, there's a window, and next year probably, if he doesn't make an impact this year, that window is going to be closing if he doesn't step up next year. But we're not at that point yet. People shouldn't get ahead of themselves. And I don't think it would be a lot different if Notre Dame was not as good as we thought they were going to be at receiver, and then he still wasn't playing. But I think it's more of the fact that, well, they're just guys who are better in front of him right now. They're just better than him right now.
It's interesting because I've watched the group pretty intently when I was there, and the one thing that stood out to me is there just really wasn't a lot of difference between the guys, and that's encouraging. I don't mean that in a negative way. Before, Jamie, we would watch and you'd see two guys, and you're like, okay, those guys are dudes, and everybody else would be like, they're not. You know what I mean? This year, you watch these guys, and every guy runs good routes. They're catching the ball well. They show very similar quickness and explosion. And, it seems like talent-wise, Notre Dame has a lot of what I would call number 2 receivers right now, right? They got a whole bunch of guys who could be really legit good number 2 receivers. They don't have the thoroughbred. They don't have the number 1, but they got a lot of good number 2s. And, some of them haven't developed into number 2 yet, but they have that kind of upside and potential. And that's what's encouraging to me. And, sometimes you just need an opportunity. And, all of a sudden, Riley Leonard started to feel confident in Jaden Greathouse. Well, get him the damn ball. All of a sudden he gets the ball, and next thing you know, great things are starting to happen. And so I think that that's what we got to hope for that's going to happen with this group. Now, I wonder who the first person was on the phone to Elijah after Mike Denbrock said this. Elijah is a freshman who's incredibly frustrating because of his skill level, talent standpoint. He's elite. He understands football. He understands how to break people down in space, but I can't quite get him to learn to master the playbook quite yet. So I can't get him lined up enough to consistently as I need to for him to actually show the talent he's got. There's a lot of good there. There's some things he got to work on. I'm sure Plaxico was on the phone right away.
I was going to say, his old man was the guy.
Yeah, absolutely. He was on the phone.
He picked up the
and he's saying,
immediately, yeah.
5-alarm fire. You have a chance to play. Learn the playbook. 5-alarm fire. No coach says that unless he wants that guy on the field. I mean, no coach says that.
There.
He wants him out there, or we wouldn't have said that.
To motivate him, yeah,
absolutely, 100%. And I guarantee you, Plaxico is on the phone saying, "You better get this playbook down because they want you to play." That's what they're saying. He knows. He's been there. He knows. And to me, that's encouraging, man. That's encouraging. I've never seen. I've been following Mike Denbrock for 25. I've never seen him do that. I've never seen him say that, and that tells me that he thinks that this guy can help him this year, and he's hoping that by saying this. This is a guy that will do what he needs to do because he feels like he can help him. That's encouraging to me. The other thing I thought was, and we've been saying this really for a while, there's no question this group really likes Nolan James. There's no doubt about it. I mean, for the things that they said about Nolan James, both Denbrock and Marcus Freeman, this guy's going to be a special player. I think that you don't see coaches say stuff like that unless they really feel he's going to be special. So that I think is really encouraging as well. Now, if I do have a concern, Jamie, and I think it's a slight one, look at Nolan there. I mean, that's a jacked up dude for a freshman. I mean, that really is a jacked up dude for a freshman. I mean, look at those arms. I mean, those are almost Yama arms. You know what I mean? They're almost as big as that.
Let's not go that far.
Yeah, that's true. They're not quite that big. But I'm just saying, this kid's he's going to be a monster. Again, if there's one position I'm a little bit concerned about, and it's not because I don't think the talent's there, I'm just not sure they're healthy, is the tight end position. I've heard wonderful things about Eli Raridan. I think he's going to have a monster year. But here in Ty Washington having a wrist thing, that's a little concerning for me. Jack Larson, I think, is a pretty good player, but can he hold up in the run game? As a blocker, I don't know. That I think is the one concern I have. Cooper Flanagan, because he had his Achilles tendon torn in the Georgia game, we'll be lucky to have him at the end of the year. I think that's an injury you can come back and play, but you're not quite the same for quite a while, even after you start playing. So, I think maybe towards the end of the year, you might get to see Cooper, become Cooper again, but that's going to be down the way. But I had heard good things about Ty Washington. I'd heard good things that he's, pretty good blocker, surprisingly good blocker, and really shown some good stuff in the passing game. That wrist, though, he wouldn't be playing if it were broken, that's for sure, or even cracked. So, you think this is something that can get him healthy in time? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, I don't know, because based on the comments from Denbrock, like it wasn't like concrete. He just said like he's got a little bit of a wrist issue going on that he's dealing with. It's a little sore. We'll get him healed up. So who knows what exactly that means? Hopefully that means that he's good and completely healthy for Miami, because I think he sounds like he will be the second guy when they go to 12 personnel. Like, and that, like you said, we've heard a lot of good stuff about him, that he's had a really good camp and kind of like surprised some people. And, and I heard from when I was there too, that was one of the things. He was one of the guys that when they brought him in the summer, because you never know, and he hadn't played that much the last year at Arkansas. And a lot of it was based off of them taking them was Denbrock's previous relationship with him and what he kind of thought he could be before when he was recruiting him. And they were surprised at how ready he was and how he was in a good position to contribute. And he probably, I would say there was a very good chance he was going to be tight end too anyways, ahead of Kevin Bauman, even if Bauman was healthy. So I don't think you should look at it as like, well, he was the guy there. Like, no, he was probably going to be tight end too. So I think that's, as long as he's healthy, I think they're going to be pretty good, and we'll just have to wait and see. But honestly, though, they're just not going to be that much of a 12 personnel team anyways. I worry about maybe some like short yardage things, but the fact that, what Denbrock said, they haven't thought about moving an offensive lineman and putting him at tight end for blocking purposes in those situations. They haven't even thought about that yet. To me, that's a good sign that they're blocking pretty well.
All right, I wanted to mention our other sponsor, which is H2 Pickleball, founded by alum Todd Hill. It is teaming up with fellow alums Jack Gibbs and Will Howells, a top 10 pickleball pro, to bring Indy fans the Indy Pickleball Crew League. Besides football, what a better way to connect and engage Indy fans than through pickleball. Membership is free, and members will have access to special pickleball events and discounts. The first event will be a tournament before the Purdue game with medal rounds played on campus. A portion of the proceeds will go to the Rockne Athletics Fund to support our student athletes. Contact Todd at 574-339-5195 to join the league, and be sure to visit H2 Pickleball facility in Mishawaka when you're in town. H2 Pickleball is located at 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka. Once again, that's 55801 Evergreen Plaza Drive in Mishawaka, or you can call Todd at 574-339-5195. Yama, when I look at this situation, I get out of fall camp and I always sit here and say, do I feel better about this team knowing what I know? Do I feel worse about this team knowing what I know? And I think a lot of times it's hard to really gauge. I've seen in years past where you hear, oh man, the offense has been terrible. They haven't been able to do anything against the defense. And then they come out and they play really well. And you're like, what was all this talk about? And you've heard the opposite sometimes too. So, do you think there's much we can really gain, from just kind of the tidbits that we've had, the things we've seen? For me personally, I'm not as concerned about offense because I think the skill talent is way better than it was last year. I know I've heard some concerning things about the offensive line, but again, you have to put it in context that they're going against the best defense that they're probably going to play. Certainly the best defense I think they're going to play against, but maybe one of the very best in the entire country. And it takes a while for things to start to gel, right? And a lot of times when you're kind of putting people in and pulling people out. Like, we know for a fact yesterday, Gerby Lambert was running with the ones at certain times, and then they'd put Sullivan Absher in there with the ones some of the time as well. And kind of like they did at quarterback, because they wanted to see, which guy does it. And you're not kind of all in sync at this point, because you've had so many guys come in and play and do this and do that. And I think as it gets near game time, there's like a mental switch that goes on in these players' heads that, okay, now's the time that I got to start locking in, and we got to start locking in as a unit. I think that's going to happen with the offense. I'm even more encouraged about the defense than I thought I would be. I just am, just based off of things I've heard. So that's kind of where I'm at. What about you, buddy?
Well, I think I'd feel way worse about things coming out of camp if I heard the offensive line was dominating the defensive line, especially because I think that the two offensive lines that Notre Dame's going to see first, with Miami and A&M, those are the two best lines that they're going to see all season. And that's probably the strength of those teams' offenses, is those offensive lines. And if I thought Notre Dame's offensive line was just dominating the defensive line, if that's all we heard from most of the camp was that was going on, it's not like you wouldn't feel good about the offensive line, but you would be way more concerned about the defensive line and who they're going to face. Because then, that's going to be a key to those games, is like, they got to stop the run. They got to whoop them up front. And that's going to be a thing. So that is going to be huge in those games. And I think that there's nothing that could make you feel great about, even if one guy dominated at quarterback the whole time and it said like this was the guy and it was so obvious, whatever. I don't know if that would make you feel good, because you just have to know about a guy when it's actually happening. That in Miami, that is a completely different situation than camp, which is why we said, like, hey, let it all play out and see what happens once whoever wins the job is going to be that guy. So there's nothing there that could really kind of change your mind. But I know at like receiver, Mike, 2023, the 2022 and 2023, the receivers just got absolutely dominated by Notre Dame's DBs. And it was something that we saw and heard. And that didn't make me feel good about the receivers at all. And it turned out it was real. That was very real that year. And we just haven't heard stuff like that. That isn't happening. So I feel we've got the right answers that we wanted to hear about the defense, like we mentioned before. And then offensively, definitely feel really good about like the ceiling of the offense and what they can be. And we'll just see what happens with the quarterback.
Yeah, I think that was a good point about the defensive line and against these offensive lines that they're going to go against. I think you and I, that was always our kind of concern with this year, even heading into spring, was, can this team stop the run? Can, with these new guys, Jared Dawson, and can these guys come back, and Gabe Rubio and Anye and all these guys, can they come back and be effective against the run? Can they be guys that can shut down a running game but also generate a pass rush? And we were concerned about that. I think we saw a lot in the spring game, Jamie, that gave us some positive things. We felt, I know I did, I don't want to speak for you, but I saw some things from some of those guys that I felt like, okay, yeah, this is good. I like this. And then hearing that this is what's happened a lot during fall camp, is that the defensive line has been really, really solid. I think that's encouraging, and that gives me hope, because I 100% agree with you. Miami, if they can run the football on Notre Dame, it's going to be a long day. Notre Dame has to shut down their running game, because with Carson Beck, if you can pressure Carson Beck, he's not the same player as if he can sit back there all day. And that's what Notre Dame's going to have to do. And if you can shut down the run and they can pin their ears back and come after Carson Beck, it's going to be a long day for Carson Beck. But Notre Dame's going to have to be able to shut down the run. They're going to have to win first and second down. If they do that, they have a great chance to win. And it'll be the same thing against Texas A&M. that's a very experienced offensive line at Texas A&M. People, I mean, they got some big dudes too, man. I mean, those are big guys. So it's not like that. This is not a concern. Going back to tight end, I think that the one thing that concerns me there, and it's just more the first couple games, and that's I realize that they're probably not going to be playing a lot of 12 personnel, but when you're down there in that Miami Heat, Eli's going to need a breather now and again. He's not going to be able to play every single snap. And so you got to have somebody quality that you can put in there. That's really the only concern, is going down there playing in that environment for the first time and not having somebody that you can sub him with at least a little bit. That's a lot to ask for a guy that's, been injured a lot. And, he's a tough kid. My gosh, when you look at his physical shape, that guy is just put together like crazy, but you still need a breather now and again. And so that's the only little concern I have there, but I just feel pretty good about it, man. I feel good. Greg, go ahead.
Gentlemen, we've got some breaking news across the wire. Notre Dame captains being announced live right now. First, we have Drake Bowen. We've got some surprises here, I think, Jamie.
Really?
So we're monitoring. Well, I don't know about surprises. So we've got Drake Bowen, Donovan Heinisch, captain. Will Pauling.
Interesting.
I mean, he was a captain of Wisconsin. Goo-rat.
Yes.
It's surprising just because he's new, but I think other than that, it's not a surprise based on literally every single thing we've heard about him in his work ethic and all of that. Billy Strouth.
Doesn't surprise me.
Captain.
Yeah. Doesn't surprise me.
Go over those four. We'll see that they're kind of rolling them out one at a time. So those are the four. I think right now.
When you watch Billy Strouth practice, or at least when I did, which is he was different. The two that I got. Oh, he was a different player. I mean, you can tell this guy is motivated, wants to kill people, and
I think he's going to have a great season.
That was very, very encouraging to me. I also think having Ashton be his best friend right next to him, I think those two are going to team up. That's going to be exciting. But I like the fact that Strouth is going to be that guy, and I've heard he's a guy who will talk. He will say stuff. So I think that's important. Again, Will Pauling, I think as much as he's a talent, I think that Mike Brown knows who he is as a person. And he also knew that you had a lot of young guys. You needed to bring somebody that you knew that had that kind of leadership ability. So that makes sense to me. It really does. Drake Bowen's a no-brainer. Heinisch, I think, is a no-brainer.
Adon Schuler just named captain. Announced.
That doesn't surprise me either. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm surprised by any of those guys. I think they absolutely have everything that you look for in a captain. Even if you think of Schuler and you think, well, he's young. Oh, it's only his second season as a starter or whatever. And the same kind of thing with Bowen. Both of those guys, that part of the thing that got them to this point was they were just absolute film junkies, guys that absorbed things from Schuler with X Watts, Bowen from JD Bertrand and Kaiser. Those guys took the examples of previous captains and have built on that. So I think that makes total sense. And I also think for people who are, because I saw some people in the chat were surprised by Donovan Heinisch. You shouldn't
Not at all.
He played.
You don't know anything about Donovan Heinisch and how respected he is.
Yeah. He is absolutely. And he is an absolute dog. He is and trust me, he is going to be a guy who's heard from this year. I know they love him. They absolutely love him. Absolutely love him. And just like they loved his brother, right? It's the exact same thing. And it's not at all shocking that it happened. I don't know if there'll be any other. I wonder if there'll be any others.
I mean,
people were talking about
Jeremiah Love.
Yeah, people were saying they were surprised by that. I'm not really surprised by that, and that's not to say that Jeremiah Love is not captain worthy, right? I think that they needed captains in the two positions that they have. I think they really needed a captain at wide receiver, and they really needed one at offensive line. I really think that those were the two positions that they needed it more than anything. And we know Pat Coogan was a really good leader, and there was just no obvious to me. Who's the next guy coming in that would be the leader? It wasn't obvious to me, and now that Bill's that guy, I get it, especially watching him work and the way he's worked. I think that that's important. And as I mentioned, I think it's really important for them to come up with a captain in that wide receiver room. They needed somebody to show that this is the way you have to work in order to be an effective player. And I think that having those two positions were more important than naming, Jeremiah Love. You've already got plenty of leadership in that group. There's plenty of talent, plenty of leadership. You don't need somebody kicking somebody's ass, along the way saying, hey, get up, that type of thing. So I could see that being the case. And I don't think that that's a negative to, Jeremiah Love by any stretch of the imagination. So,
I'd wait a bit, actually, because Emil Wagner was just announced as well.
Okay.
So now
that doesn't surprise me.
Not a surprise at all.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think
I was like, I as soon as they named Stroud, I was like, well, maybe they won't do Wagner, but like both those guys are deserving of being captains.
Yeah, I agree. Interesting. I wonder if there'll be anybody else.
Yeah. So we're at 6 now, I believe. 6 captains so far.
Yeah. I'm sure somebody's going to complain.
What? Yeah,
there will be complaints no matter what happens. So it is what it is. But hey, I'm excited. I'm excited for those guys, and it's a big honor. It really is, and well deserved. Well deserved, guys. And it's interesting because now that I think about it, I go back to, if you read my notes on the first practice, Wagner was pulling aside Gerby. He was pulling aside Sullivan Absher. He was pulling aside Will Black and Trebig. I saw him do it with all 4 of them, pull them aside and coach them. And that's what leadership is, man. That's what it is. So they'd get done with the rep. Wagner was there saying, hey, here's what you did right. Here's what you did wrong. That's what leadership is. So I like seeing that. And he's obviously a great person. So that's good to see.
One last thing to add to it. I mean, if this is it for the captains, we'll see if there's anyone else, but everyone except for Will Pauling has more eligibility after this year. Like, I mean, some of the guys are 4th-year guys, right? So it's not like a surprising thing or whatever. Like, I mean, I easily could see Shrouf probably go to the league next year, maybe Wagner, depending on the season. Yeah, like who knows? Like Drake, that could happen. I don't think Adon, I think, will stay another year, but it's not the fact that you have those guys and it's like they could they're young and they could be there for another year is, I mean, that's a really good sign for your program.
While we wait, here's one thing that I wanted to point out, and this is the last thing I wanted to say, and it was Ash, and he was asked about what's impressed him most about the defense since arriving at Notre Dame. And he said, one of the things you find out about these guys that paper doesn't tell the story is how connected they are. This is a really tight-knit group of players. They're competing every single day. All of them want to start. They all want to play, but they understand only 11 guys can go out there for the first snap. But they're all competing every single day, and they really are all about the team. That's what's really impressive. That connection has really made these guys ultra committed too. They spend a lot of time studying the game. They spend a lot of time with each other in the film room without the coaches, and it's been very impressive to watch. As a coach, I mean, that's when you get excited about a team. When you can say things like that about a team, that's when you get excited about them. So, and here's a guy that just didn't know. He hadn't been there. So I like the fact that that's the one thing that he says he's most excited about, and the thing that he learned the most about him. That's very encouraging. So,
and that's culture.
Right.
That's culture.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's the best thing about it is it's saying that they have an outstanding culture and that they're not selfish. You know what I mean? Nobody's throwing a fit if they're not on the first string. And so it's, very, very encouraging. Well, I don't think, is there any more coming or?
I don't know, but I mean,
I think that's it. I think that's all of them.
Okay. All right, folks. Well, that's going to be it for the show. Thanks to Greg for doing a great job of producing the show. We want to say thanks to our sponsors. Also, if you have not signed up for Irish Sports Daily, please go to the front page of irishsportsdaily.com. Sign up for a premium subscription. Think you'll like it. And then if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, search for Irish Sports Daily on YouTube. Subscribe and like the video so you can check it out. And if you like watching the videos, please send them to other Notre Dame fans and help us grow our channel. We'd greatly appreciate that as well. Thanks for listening and watching, and we will talk to you next week on Power Hour.